Okay guys, so we just drew with Bayern Munich in a game that we could have won comfortably or in a game that we could have lost with a big margin. What was clear about this game is both teams are very strong in transitions. The changes made by both managers had a significant impact in this match. I remember ahead of the game Tuchel said he would try to minimize the spaces for Real Madrid's key players, and I think he did that for the most part. Bayern sat deeper than I thought they would and tried to focus on being deadly in transitions. In large stretches of this match, it felt like we were cruising and controlling the match, but in others, it felt like we were just hanging on. Many of the concerns ahead of the match came to fruition, like being very bad in the first 15 minutes of the game, or being very poor from corner kicks, or the mismatch between Lucas Vasquez and Musiyala. What didn't make sense to me in this match is how we allowed those world-class wingers of Bayern Munich to run at our fullbacks. You just know that when Sane and Musiyala are running at you with the ball, you're not in an ideal situation, especially when Lucas Vasquez is starting instead of Carvajal. One of the things that Dani Carvajal does really well is he doesn't allow the left wingers oftentimes to run at him in that manner. He'll either get very close and tight to them, not allowing them to turn. He'll either do a tactical foul or he'll deny them that much space where he's just backpedaling. And that's something he did really well against Jack Grealish against Manchester City, is he didn't give Jack that much time and space to just run at him and either go inside or out. I think one of the things that made this match difficult for us is us having to adapt and cope with how Bayern Munich made adjustments in this match. In the beginning of the game, we saw Musiyala and Sane play more as forwards, as a right and left forward, with Kane playing more in that 10 role, trying to feed them the ball in transitions. But we saw the adjustment that Tuchel made at halftime where they were playing wider and he switched both of the players. But when we go back to what happened in the first 15 minutes of the game, they had two golden opportunities, and it was part of the reason for that is there was absolutely no protection from our players. Tchouaméni gets caught out of position and the ball is turned over and Bayern Munich is in transition. I mean, that's a situation that cannot happen. Usually Carlo Ancelotti's teams are known for being very organized, and it's very clear that there was a lack of organization. One of the things that Carlo tried to do in this game is every time Bayern had the ball, he wanted Tchouaméni to step up and try to disrupt some of their build-up play to prevent them from progressing the ball forward and making it up to players like Harry Kane. But what that did was it left a gap, and it left that space behind Tchouaméni for them to exploit. And Tchouaméni is very good at screening and shielding his teammates, but when he's playing in a double pivot, and he's very clearly, he's a world-class number 6, but he doesn't have recovery pace. So you just felt like either Camavinga or Valverde playing in that double pivot in that position where Tchouaméni was playing would have suited this game better, because if it was a game of transitions, especially like how it was a very open game at times. They had that recovery pace to be able to make it back. And that's why I thought Carlo Ancelotti got the lineup wrong in this game. I think Tchouaméni should have been playing at center back with Rudiger, and Camavinga should have been playing in that pivot. And the reason for that is there seemed to be a lack of balance in our midfield. Kross is very good at ball distribution and progressing the ball forward, and Tchouaméni is really good at that as well. But they seemed very similar in their type of attributes on the ball. And off the ball, Tchouaméni doesn't necessarily have the recovery pace of Camavinga or Valverde. But one of the qualities that both Camavinga and Valverde have is the ball carrying capabilities. So combining Kroos's ball progression and passing ability with Camavinga and Valverde's ball carrying, you get that balance of being able to either move the ball forward, or at times like we saw against Manchester City, there were so many times where we were being pressed very high up the pitch, especially at the Bernabeu. I remember a couple of times where Camavinga was able in tight spaces to make runs with the ball and be able to release us out of pressure. And that seemed to be something that was missing from our game, is having that sort of balance in our midfield. And it's very clear that when Camavinga comes on, he gives us a little bit more bite. And even if you're able to get past him, he has a recovery pace and he has that ability to win a tackle. So in my opinion, I think that's something that Carlos should make a change on for the return leg. And the other thing that I've noticed about Tchouaméni when he plays as center back is he's really good at playing crosses into the box from that position, from being a center back. He has this pass on lock where he sort of plays it with the inside of his foot and he is able to find people on the far post. So I think that's something that is a sort of weapon in his locker. He's really good at ball distribution. So in terms of ball playing center backs, both him and Rudiger are really solid if they're being pressed. So I feel very comfortable with both of them starting the return leg with Camavinga playing in that pivot role. But the other thing this game also made me realize is if we had a prime Toni Kroos and a prime Luka Modric in this game, I think we win it comfortably, because at times when we did have the ball, it just felt like those two guys can control a match, and they can control the tempo, and they can slow the game down if they need to. They can speed up the game. They can go direct. They can do all of that when they were at their prime playing together, and you really could not press them. But that's something that was lacking. You know, it was either Modric who was doing that when Kroos was off, or it was either Kroos who was doing that when Modric was off. Now, let's talk about the first goal that we concede, where Sané scores that goal. Sané obviously is a world-class winger. There's no question about that. I'm a huge fan of Sané, and having him run at Ferland Mendy with practically zero protection for him is really not an ideal situation. So and part of the reason for this is there's so many people running in transition from Bayern Munich at the time that Sané is running at Ferland Mendy. So Ferland Mendy has to worry about Goretzka, who's making a run inside. He has to worry about Harry Kane. One of the things you can't do as a fullback is allow a player who's left-footed to cut in on his left foot. You just can't allow that to happen. And the other thing is he really needs protection. I mean, if I'm not blaming the goal on Kroos, if he was able to somehow cut off Sané from the inside while Ferland Mendy focused on forcing Sané to go outside, then we wouldn't have had that problem. Given how much success that Bayern Munich had with switching Musiyala and Sané to the other wings, we have to think that they'll probably try to do that in their return leg. And it's a simple fix. We just can't get caught in transitions against these types of players where they're running up against you one-on-one, isolating your fullbacks. If you are isolated against Sané or you're isolated against Musiyala, that is not a situation that you want to be in. We need to find a way where there's protection for the fullbacks. And that's why whoever's in the pivot, whether it's Camavinga or Valverde with Kroos in the return leg, they need to be the furthest player back. And of course, it's going to be huge for us having Dani Carvajal back, because him defensively, his defensive instinct, and knowing the ins and out of how to defend against world-class wingers is going to make a big difference. And Lucas Vasquez is a great player, but he's not suited for games like this. And another point I need to bring up and emphasize as well is how poor we are from corner kicks. It just looked like such a huge vulnerability, and I know there's going to be a huge focus on their part to try to make something more of it in the return leg, because they came close to scoring from corner kicks. And they had an opportunity where Eric Dyer was wide open. He headed it straight at Lunin, and we're really lucky not to concede from that opportunity. And then they had a corner kick almost 2 minutes later where they almost scored from it again. So that's just something between now and then we need to focus on in a big way ahead of the second leg. What was clear about this game is when Carlos switched up the system and he made our players, when he made Vinny and Rodrigo play more, he made them play on the wide left and wide right, and especially Rodrigo's side, where he started running at Mazraoui, he was having a lot of luck, and it was something we weren't exploiting. So that's just something that is clearly going to be needed in the return leg, which is to play wider, to try to isolate their fullbacks. And I don't hate the idea of Vinny being a number 9 or being the player furthest up when we're in transition. I think it's a really good idea to have Vinny be the furthest player up when we're in transition. But in possession, their fullbacks, I still don't think they are. I think their fullbacks can be got at. We can run at them. And this is maybe calls for a game where you play Brahim Diaz and you go with a more attack-minded strategy where you play Vinny, Rodrigo, Brahim Diaz, Valverde in the pivot with Kroos and Bellingham. I think that's a very ambitious lineup, but that way you have the width and you can isolate their fullbacks and you still have the quality and the legs in there, because Bellingham, Rodrigo, Brahim, Valverde, all those guys can really contribute a lot defensively and without possession. So I'll be dropping a video this weekend on the specific tactical adjustments that Carlo Ancelotti needs to make in order for us to be able to make it to the final. I'm going to spend a lot of time this weekend reviewing tape of how this game was played and where we can have some more success. In my mind, I already know the lineup that's needed to be able to defeat Bayern Munich, and I know we have the quality in our squad. We have a world-class manager, we have world-class players. But it's clear that there are some tweaks and adjustments that are needed. We were able to score 2 goals from very little chances. So if we're at the Bernabeu and we create more opportunities, I expect us to have more goals. But we're at the Bernabeu. We're at our stadium now. It's 0-0 headed into the second game, essentially. I'm feeling confident. I think we'll make it to the final. I saw today that Borussia Dortmund was able to defeat PSG. Obviously, a lot to play for in the second leg. I do think ultimately PSG should be able to pull through when they go back to Paris. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. How are you feeling about the second leg? Are you more or less optimistic after the first leg? Thank you for watching. Hala Madrid.